Hello, people. What a great crowd, Chris.
Yeah, really happy to be here. Very excited to be here.
Thank you.
You know what? Maybe we should start out with some introductions.
Yes,
so, so let me introduce you to my partner in crime, Mehnaaz Abidi. About a year ago, Nike was on the lookout for our next technical product leader. And enter Mehnaaz. And now she leads all of technical product in EMEA for Nike Direct. And also, the PMF rated her as one of the top 40 product leaders in all of EMEA.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chris. First, let's count the number of sushis you have on today.
Oh.
Yeah, we want to do a count. Sorry. One,
I got the belt buckle.
3, 4.
And then I have 2 more hidden.
5, 6,
There,
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So good job.
That's about a normal day for us. That's about a normal day.
So that's how pumped up we are. And yes, so I've been doing product management from the early days of the industry when the product manager title did not exist. We were called website producers and sometimes business analysts. And speed up to today and a bunch of technology companies after, I'm still evolving on product practices. You know, you blink and the trend changes. But first, let me introduce Chris McGinnis, my partner in engineering. So Nike, at some point, started to think about distributing their teams from their world headquarters in Portland to our European office in Netherlands. And the Nike leadership scanned the landscape to find an engineering titan who could lead the teams there. Enter Chris.
Thanks, Mehnaaz. It makes me blush. So yeah, as Mehnaaz said, I've been leading engineering at Nike's European headquarters for the past year. But I've actually been with Nike for over 7 years, where I started out in Nike Direct working on .com, which really was helping Nike connect one-on-one with its consumers. I started out as a software engineer, and I was working in I was helping to champion contract-first development for Nike.com service-oriented architecture. From there, I started building some of the first REST services that allowed Nike to take commerce off the website and into apps and into the applications used by our store employees. The natural progression after that was to help Nike transition those apps then onto the cloud, where I was very lucky to manage some extremely strong teams. And the one constant that we've seen throughout all of this technological change has been the need for highly skilled technical people. So let me introduce you to Nike's newest addition, our European technology squads. So did you check out the Nike employee store in that video? It's pretty sweet.
Pretty sweet,
Yeah.
right? All right. So like every organization that is the size of Nike, our path to DevOps has been unique. We have shifted many gears before finding a balance between strategic ops and sprinting development and creating a practice that makes sense to our journey. We were born as a consumer-crazy company before finding a balance, and and went through rounds of discovery, trying to combine our vision, cultural philosophies, practices, and tools to create high-performing teams that make sports a daily habit for everyone. As you've seen in the video, we have lived that tradition through many years to today, where we have evolved into having technology in our DNA. From self-adapting sneakers for basketball players to helping runners find their right fit at home, we are raising the game every day. And the distributed model allows us to unleash the potential of our organization with amazing diversity. We have folks from the United Kingdom, Brazil, India, Portugal, Netherlands, Canada, Spain, the United States, China, Malaysia, and many, many other countries trying to solve problems in the most unique way possible. But it is tough. Why is it tough, Chris?
Well, Mehnaaz, really to unleash the potential of a great team, they need to be engaged, they need to be inspired, and hustling every day to get great product out. We need to give them the capability to deliver quickly and with a solid ops framework. So, of course, enter DevOps. But why is it challenging? Well, if it was easy, we wouldn't all be here today. DevOps, as a practice, has multiple tenets that kind of aggregates responsibility within the squad, but it works within the agile space, which demands constant real-time communication. So this is the challenge that keeps most development organizations from being experts in DevOps. And when you think about them for distributed engineering, right, these challenges are only compounded. And so the Nike that Canvas plays in, we have distributed engineering offices in all the places that you see in the swooshes above: the Middle East, Europe, America, and China. And so across these distributed teams, we're trying to figure out how to best leverage resources, dollars, time, and humans, how to build thought leadership, and most importantly, how do we ship technology at the speed of our consumers?
So Chris, let's bring these challenges into the lens of our very first pilot around the distributed model, that is the Nike.com homepage. On most days, when we drop the hottest sneakers on our sneakers app, we see volumes of hundreds and thousands with almost 100% sell-through rate in less than 5 minutes.
That's not even during the holidays.
Exactly, boom. And so that's the volume that we are looking at, right? And when we started to think about this pilot with our homepage, we know that most of Nike's homepages in different regions have almost millions and millions of traffic every day, every hour. So we set out to pilot a nearshore model with these teams where we wanted to place strategic engineering along with the squads in our European office. Nike had tried many forms of distributed model before: innovation studios, offshoring, and some versions of remote work. For this pilot, we wanted to combine the learnings from those models and every distributed playbook that was out there, and then try it on a digital product where we could contain risk. Our aim was to prove that a domain could be extended successfully in any region with autonomy and allow us to build more diverse thinking into solving technology problems across teams. And that led us to a few weeks later, from that thought to then, to think about team formation. So Chris, how did you go about thinking to set up a new homepage squad in a European office?
Well, we started by evaluating the technical expertise in Europe and determining how difficult it would be to hire up a squad. In the Netherlands, that didn't pose too much of a challenge because there was already a large technical pool. The next thing, and you know what, it also doesn't help when you're hiring, when you're part of a globally recognized brand. And so it was easy to get developers, both locally and from all the countries that you mentioned before. We were lucky that we were able to hire both locally and internationally. The next thing we wanted to do was we had to create an onboarding plan that not only focused on technology and knowledge transfer, but also to help instill Nike's culture into these new employees. You know, we wanted to make sure that Nike's culture of inclusion and diversity was strong. And so as we ramped up our homepage squad, we created our own playbook that focused on what was important to us. We wanted the teams to be well-informed. We wanted them to be able to operate with speed and agility. We wanted the ability to ship high-quality code on time, and within our culture, be accepting of feedback and use that feedback to constantly self-develop. And we also wanted to maintain the same coding standards across all squads at Nike for ease of collaboration. So before we get even deeper into it, let's talk about what we're not going to cover. So the items that you see up here, we're not saying that these are unimportant for DevOps, but when you look at DevOps through a distributed engineering lens, these don't make much of an impact. Continuous integration, continuous deployment, that all happens on a remote server somewhere out there. It doesn't matter where your teams sit. And for things like the code review and pull requests, well, that might be determined by the maturity of your teams. So if you're in a distributed model and you've been doing it for a while, your teams are probably somewhat autonomous and can review and commit their own code. But if you're just starting it out, you might want these teams across locations to review each other's code as a form of knowledge sharing. So it really becomes up to the company and how you want to operate that.
Yep, so let's talk about from that very first model that we tried, how we learned, how we applied our learnings from then to today, where we have scaled up our teams, and what we are going to cover in this talk, right? So first one being how we communicate. I had once read that communication is the oxygen for distributed squads. And that's because you don't want them to feel like they're just working on assigned tasks, right? You want them to empower the brain and not just feel like an extra hand. But one of the main hurdles at Nike that we have is that all the teams are in drastically different time zones. 9 hours between Portland and Amsterdam, 6 hours between Shanghai and Portland, and so on. So then we started to think that purpose should drive the interaction in our distributed models. The outcome we want to drive at a subconscious level is that all teams working in the same domain should feel like one team. And that's why we never dictated the terms of engagement. We set out good examples and tools, and we let the teams decide what makes sense to their need. When needed, we meet both virtually and in person, and meeting in person always helps drive a stronger connect. And that is because when you build a strong bond with your teammate, you become more open to accepting feedback, and you get more open to accepting each other's mistakes as well. You become tolerant towards that. And then also, it leads to building more trust. So during sprint development, our purpose becomes one of speed. And so for that, we try to find ways like recording sprint demos rather than getting everybody into a call into the same room. And for documentation, we are trying to find a balance. We are still trying to figure out when is it too much. So the aim is to remain agile and fast. And for those reasons, what we do is we record information on stories in our backlogs, on Nike's wiki, on READMEs within applications, on slides, and on whiteboards.
Of course, it's available in all our rooms across all of our campuses.
Exactly. All our whiteboards are filled with information. And to get to a smooth sailing, we require Scrum Masters and product teams to, fight it out and do really solid prep work. Product managers ensure that our squads don't end up hunting Ahab's white whale, and all the teams are rooted within our annual strategy. All of these efforts wouldn't work as well if Nike was not so big on the thank you culture. We give shout outs and high fives and virtual high fives at every occasion that we get. We ensure that our distributed teams are constantly recognizing our work and constantly giving feedback. And that's not it, right? So at Nike, our core value is do the right thing. So we even talk it out and we call out when we see someone who is not doing the right thing. And it is these moments that brings the distributed squads even closer to each other.
Yeah, that's right. So let's talk about the development methodology. So as Nike grew as a technical company, we found that different pockets of engineering groups around Nike had started to use their own, had started to find their own technology and apply it to their specific problem, which of course led to a number of different technology stacks all over Nike. And before DevOps, that had to be supported by a single ops team, which was ridiculous. And so, that had to be supported through development, through testing, through release, and through production support as well. And so, it also, these different tech stacks has also caused Nike to not be able to react as quickly because of this diversity. And so to solve this issue, Nike looked at what we needed, and they standardized on a technical stack. And so we did this by providing common blueprints for both back-end and front-end applications. The next thing we did was we then provided tooling around those blueprints, right? So we provided ways for automated and continuous testing. We provided ways, performance testing configurations for common build pipelines. And what that did was it made that barrier of entry so low, it made it so much easier to use these, quote unquote, supported technologies than to go off and try something different. But this strategy was not without its risks, however. Now Nike, as a company, had to actively manage these tools and these blueprints.
So Chris, how will we fix this?
Yeah, so what we did to fix this was we actually assigned teams to provide governance over these tools and over these blueprints. And with the blueprints, we also treated them like open source projects. And so we let every single developer all across Nike contribute to these projects. And so that helped us evolve our platform. So now, and then finally, we needed a development framework that allowed us to scale across all of our different locations and our different domains. So we adopted the Scale Agile framework, which through PI planning gave leadership the ability to provide direction and priorities. So now Nike had the common tech stack, it had common pipelines, and it had a framework in place, and that really allowed us to start working around the clock.
All right, let's talk about prioritization, right? How many of you don't do this at your companies? Raise your hand.
I think I hear some crickets.
Exactly, yeah. Right? So we all want to do the things that are most important first. Why? Because there is always a high level of uncertainty, and we all have limited resources. At Nike, we are constantly trying to build an agile mindset. Mind you, not just practices, but a mindset. So we do break your back kind of ruthless prioritization. And at the same time, as an organization, we want to foster open-mindedness, curiosity, and a learning attitude. So how do we build that balance? We have multiple approaches for setting good objectives and metrics. So we do all sorts of things like OKRs, design sprints, story mapping, iceberg model, cost of delay, et cetera, a bunch of things around that. But coming back to our story around the distributed model, what started to happen was it became chaotic because prioritization suddenly started flowing in from all directions.
Yeah, because both product and also other stakeholders were also spread across those different locations.
So since we had our stakeholders and products in all different locations, what started to happen was in their pressure to strive for order and management, regularity, and financial results, most of these stakeholders started to poke the closest product manager next to them. Right? So then we got into a situation of a matrix of product managers across locations trying to fire prioritization across to different dependent squads. That's when we said, time out, guys, stop, let's reflect. Right? So then we did a course correction. What we now do is more of unified ceremonies within our distributed product. We do team-to-team strategy workshops where we align on our overall vision and our mission as well, and we look at our roadmaps together, and then we get into a constant iteration of improving our roadmap and ironing out dependencies. And then when we are within the sprint development, what we do is a constant pre-grooming between product teams, and that is product only, and we try to get 360 input. So this is kind of build a single funnel that goes into the squads and builds more stability. Our aim is to try and never be in an unplanned work situation, or even worse, planned work, which has undefined user value or not linked to our overall strategy.
Yeah, so let's talk about how we have set up this, this development model. So at Nike, we use domain-driven design, where each domain is made up of one or more squads. And our distributed development model is one where we extend those domains. We're not creating new domains, and we're not necessarily co-locating a single domain in a single location. So for example, the homepage squad that we referenced before, that's part of a larger Nike.com user experience domain that happens to be across 2 locations at the moment. But again, extending these domains, that presented a challenge. You know, in the old days before DevOps, you would just build your app and then throw it over to operations to handle it from there. But now we have multiple squads working within their domain. And so how do you support that entire domain? So we knew we didn't want squads within a domain to only support portions of it. And we also didn't want to have multiple people within a domain on call at a single time, right? That's just a waste of time and added stress. So, you know, that became our biggest problem. How do we support our entire domain when we have distributed engineering teams? Because, you know, no one likes to support an application that they didn't write themselves. I mean, if I had a quid for every time an engineer had to pick up and support another application and immediately said, oh, we need a massive refactor, I'd be retired on the beach somewhere. Well, maybe not a quid. Maybe if I had a Bitcoin this week, then I'd be retired on the beach somewhere. But throughout all this, with this challenge, this is where those previous investments that we talked about, that's where it really paid off.
Yes, so Chris, tell us, how did that pay off?
Yeah, so when we had the common tech stack, it made it easier for our developers to understand every application within the domain. With that level of prioritization that Mehnaaz was talking about, our developers knew exactly what the priorities were and what the important things were to focus on. The communication and collaboration that we had set up between the different teams allowed for a safe space for engineers to ask for feedback and ask for questions. And you know, I think that really sums up what the development culture is at Nike. You know, also, we tend to follow, you know, Peter Drucker has a quote that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And we tend to follow that at Nike. And that's why throughout this presentation, we've talked about technical and process elements, but we also want to focus on the culture.
Yes. So at Nike, we go beyond work conversations, and we share things about our lives and, you know, about our lives with each other. We try to find moments to laugh with each other. And one of our funny traditions that you see up on screen, that's Courtney Kistler from yesterday. Do you see all the stickers? So Nike is a sticker-crazy company. Give us 50 different occasions, we would have 5,000 stickers ready. Before we change our name, we change the sticker. And that's really fun, guys, because what that allows us to do is to collectively share our identity. These unique traditions allows your team to build that community feeling. And that's what we are aiming for within the distributed teams. We want them to feel like a community. And this goes back to the preaching of our founder, Bill Bowerman. You have a far better chance of winning in life as part of a team than as an individual.
Yeah, and this reminds me of a story. This is something that we discovered completely by accident, but was incredibly successful when ramping up our first distributed engineering squad. So what we did was we actually flew them out to Nike's world headquarters in the US, and we split that team up amongst the different domains that were already there. The idea being that they would sit within those teams and they would learn Nike's technology ecosystem. But also that they would learn each team's best practices. And then they would bring those practices back to Europe, and that would be the baseline for our digital organization there. What happened over the course of those weeks is these adopted engineers really became part of the squads that they were in. And of course, we had set up dinners, we had set up drinks and sporting events, but what really happened was the ad hoc meetings, the beers after work, the games of Rocket League in the team rooms over the lunch hour. That is really what cemented those relationships. And so we had a we had something that recently just happened where we had a team back in World Headquarters that was under the gun. They had a deadline that, based off their capability, they weren't going to meet that deadline. And so they actually called our team, and they knew that through those relations that we had set up before, they knew the expertise that we had on the team as well, and asked for some help. Now, because of the prioritization, we knew that this was important, and this was important for Nike, and so we're able to free up some resources. Because of that common tech stack that we have across all teams, we were able to put resources on there that understood how we built those back-end applications and how we built those front-end applications, so they were able to hit the ground running and be effective immediately. And those relationships that were set up a little over a year ago, those were still in place. And so the team was very welcoming. And the end result ended up being that we delivered those features on time without any extra work over the weekend or working late at nights. And that was the point. That was the single point where we knew that Nike's distributed engineering model was the success.
Exactly. And that leads to how we want to continue our story now, right? That goes on to our, something went wrong. Yes, how our story continues. So we at Nike aim for moonshots. And as a distributed team across different geos, building in so much diversity, we want to take all our distributed teams towards that journey. If you look at our most recent commercials around Nike Fit, the Adapt BB, and Adapt BB, yes,
BB,
sorry,
yeah.
Adapt BB. We want to take all our distributed teams on that journey, right? We want them to dream big and change the game every day for our consumers. And that's our next chapter, and that's what we want to learn and we want to get better at. Yep.
Yeah, so if you could pull out your mobile devices and warm up your QR code scanner. So we've covered a lot of topics today. So we've taken those topics and more, and actually included them in this DevOps guidance for distributed teams. So if you're doing distributed engineering and DevOps, or you're thinking about starting doing distributed engineering, hopefully this guide can help you out.
Yep. Guys, thank you for listening to our story, and also to the DOES organizers for letting us tell our story. I will leave you with our favorite Hawking quote. That is, help your teams to act out of common interest and not out of self-interest.
They will rise to courage and leadership.
Exactly. Thank you, guys. And this is Nike's Crazy Dream.
Thank you.
Play. Let's go.
What's your dream? To win championships? A scholarship? Do you want to be a bigger athlete than Serena Williams? Or do you want to be the first girl to play for the Yankees? Can you be the generation that ends gender inequality? Or will you show that champions in your sport can also look like you? Maybe your dream is to be the first 13-year-old to go pro.
All right, y'all.
Or to push a sport to accept everyone just as they are. But the craziest dream of all is the one that starts a million more.